open an issue or stuff. Oh, okay, it seems like it's recording.
Yeah, I hope, is everybody okay with that? Like, you can please feel free to turn off your camera if you're not. Thanks.
All right.
I mean, not Naty, obviously.
Oh, I get, yeah. All right. So since we are recording, let's just start again. So today we're going to be talking about how to get started with open source and to contribute to open source, and what open source means, and then what contributing means, and then the different ways of contributing, and then how to probably break that fear of the first contribution and start slow. So one of the things is, as women, sometimes like we just go to an open source project and then we just see there are a lot of dudes, and it could be sometimes a little bit of a hostile environment if you open an issue, and then they just it is not always nice. So also finding the right project or finding the right place, it can make the whole experience a little bit different. So I hope that today we can get a couple of those questions out and get a little bit more familiarized with the workflow, and also hopefully make our first contribution to open source and what that means. So a little bit about me. So my name is Naty Clementi. I am a software engineer at Coil. I have to say this, I have to disclose that, where I am on the software engineer and the Dask engineering team, which is Dask is an open source project. So I basically get paid to contribute to open source. So open source is part of my day-to-day, and I get to contribute to Dask, which allows you to do like parallel computing in Python. We've done other workshops on that. We can talk about that any other time. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter and on the Women Who Code Slack and DC. I'm at Naty. I forgot to put my GitHub here, but I can just send it later on. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. So for a year now, I've been working on day-to-day. My job is to basically contribute to an open source project, or part of my job is to contribute to an open source project. So there's a lot of text here, you have to read it, but the question is, I guess sometimes, what do we define, or what is open source? And I don't think there is like a one clear definition about what open source is. There are multiple stuff, but something that we can say is open source is code that is publicly accessible and anyone can kind of like inspect, modify, and distribute. And I put an "if" there because not always you can distribute, and there are like certain rules about how to go about that. So one misconception is making your source code public and just putting it out there, like dumping it on GitHub, doesn't necessarily make it open source. There are bunches of the, but like in general, you need a license. And the reason why you need a license is because software is creative work, and by default, there is copyright automatically attached to it. So if I go and I see on GitHub a repo that doesn't have a license, so there's sort of like a legal limbo where I don't know if I can use it. I wouldn't know what are the requirements of using it. Can I contribute to that? If I contribute to that, how the copyright works? So in general, we want to have a license in our repository that tells whoever wants to contribute, like what are the rules to contribute or take code from there. So we will say that a license is like a contract between the authors of the software and the users. And this gives like the authors the power to share with users and collaborate with developers in a more, I would say, like it makes it more easier because we all know the rules, and then we're just going to be working in this environment where the rules are clear. Now, the world of licenses is like, it's huge, and there are like way too many licenses, and there are way too many restrictions. I don't want to get into all of them. Personally, I only know the ones that I mainly use, which is BSD, which is like the most permissive license that basically says you can take any of this code, just if you take it and use it and remodify it and release it, you just need to give credit to the team that created that. Where giving credit is just an attribution or a sentence that said, hey, this code is based on blah, blah, blah. And there are like ways that you can show that. But in general, like not any, when you're looking to contribute to open source, like if you see certain kind of licenses, that means that if you take some code, for example, the GPL or the copyleft kind of licenses, if I take a portion of a repository or some code that I took from a repository, I have a copyleft, that automatically means that if I want to release my code using that code, I need to also release it in copyleft. So if you want to make it more permissive, then then you cannot use necessarily that code. So those are things to keep in mind when we're looking into contributing to open source. I would say that most open source codes these days, or at least the whole PyData ecosystem, they have either BSD or MIT licenses. At least there are tiny differences on BSD and MIT. And I want to make a point on why I would choose one or the other. And this is a helpful thing for, let's say, when you are creating let's say you are creating your own project and you want to decide, you want to make it fully permissive so anyone can contribute and anyone can reuse, and you want to share your knowledge with the world. Why would you use one or the other? So there's a tiny, tiny, tiny difference between the MIT and the BSD free class, which are the most permissive, forward permissive licenses. Also, this allows that any of these two licenses, if I have my code under this license and I release it under this license, any private company that wants to take that code and maybe package it and probably sell it can do that. So that is something that a BSD or an MIT license allows. So if you don't want your code to be taken and then make profit, the people can make profit out of it, they will have to give you attributions. So your name should show on their code at some point, but then they can sell it if that's something that can happen. I don't know if that has happened, or I'm not familiarized with the case, but that's a possibility. Like BSD 3 and MIT are fully permissive licenses. So the main difference between MIT and BSD 3 is, I would say that MIT license there's one sentence that it says the above copyright notice and this permission notice shall be included in all copies or substantial portions of the software. So that means if I take a substantial portion of your software, I have to give you attribution and just mention your name. The question is, what is substantial and how do we measure what substantial is? So that's the only difference. And that's why I like using BSD3, because if I release my code on the BSD3 and someone wants to take, let's say, just one tiny portion of my code, they still have to say that they took it from my repository and give me attribution. So that's kind of like a super short intro to licenses. There is in the material, there is a great reading that I link on the slide before, that if you want to read more and learn more about licenses, you can go to that link. But in general, a good thing to do when you start getting to open source is to go and check for the license on that repo. You will notice that there are a lot of repos that don't have licenses, and that could be your first contribution, your open source contribution to that repository. So when it comes to contributing to open source, then what does it mean to contribute? There are a lot of like also thoughts on, oh, well, I don't know how to code, but I want to contribute to open source. How can I do that? So if you are a beginner into getting open source, there are certain repositories that have good first issue labels. There will be a lot of like documentation issues to work on. You can be reading the docs of, let's say that you work with pandas every day, and you're reading the docs and then you find a typo, you can report that and then someone can guide you. Oh, yeah, let's just open a PR and a PR is a pull request and then fix that typo. You can, of course, contribute to code, doing bug fixes, new features, tests. You can report issues. You can open an issue and say, hey, I think there is a problem with this. That's still a contribution. You can organize events, teaching things about the software. That's also a different kind of contribution. You can translate code or doc streams into different languages, or you can write tutorials. There's a big space on that. And I would say that if you are a beginner, I will get started with check for the documentation. If you're reading documentation of something that you use at work or at school every day, I say, hey, I don't think this is clear. I think what this is trying to do is this. That's a good contribution. So one thing that we got to keep in mind is when we're talking about contributions and open source, there is usually some kind of workflow that involves GitHub and Git. And there are other versions of, I believe that instead of GitHub, you could have GitLab. I don't know. I don't know if that's the most common case, but the main thing is Git is something that allows, is like a version control system where you can track your work in your local computer. And it's a good practice to have that, so then you can have version control of what you're doing, so then you can avoid having bazillion files that are different from, and you don't know which version of the code works. Now, every user in their laptop have Git, and then you can be doing your code. And I would say that GitHub is like a web-based Git version control where it's hosting your code. So it's kind of like a place where you can have a cloud copy of what you're doing locally. So then let's say that you're working on your laptop, you have your things in GitHub, but your laptop die. If things are in GitHub, then you can get a new laptop and then you can bring those stuff down to your laptop and then keep working. And it's also a good way of collaborating. Like you can use version control and GitHub for your personal work and things that you have full control. But when you want to collaborate and contribute to open source and get in bigger projects, like you have multiple users and they're working on their computers in different stuff, and they all just converge into GitHub. Are there any questions so far? Because I just talk a lot and I just dump a lot of jargon here, and I'm not sure if everyone is familiarized with what I'm talking here. So this will be a good point to stop and ask questions.
So hi, hi.
Hi.
I have a question. Basically, I just want to follow what you were saying, and not follow like trying to connect these things that you were saying. Is that first you started with the license, so we need license to be able to contribute to open source?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you personally don't need a license. The repository has to have a license that gives you an idea on okay, what you can do or what you can. Now, if you are hosting your project, let's say that you have your own project that you develop your stuff and you would like people to contribute.
Right.
In order to give people like a good to welcome people to contribute and also to know the rules, you need to add a license to your repo. And we're going to go through how to do that, and then how you do that on GitHub and how that works.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, please.
So the license, so everyone who is contributing to that has to go through the license, read it, and then start contributing. That I understood. And then after that, you mentioned on, can you go back a few slides? Yeah. Oh, okay. So yes, okay. And then you mentioned how we can contribute. I mean, people who have started recently, they can either go through a documentation, raise some issues, report issues, or suggest something. Okay. Good. And what about what is it there for translations?
Oh, so for example, there are like some tutorials there. So there are some repositories or documentation of repositories. Like, let's say that do you work with pandas every day, or
Yeah.
or is okay? So pandas documentation is
Uh-huh.
written in English,
Right.
right? You could contribute. Let's say that you speak a different language. Do you speak a second language?
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so that you could actually make a contribution that is a translation to the second language of that documentation.
Okay.
And that's something that it's valuable in big projects, especially because, yeah, we are privileged that we speak English and we understand that, but there are certain countries, the amount of people that speak English is not necessarily big.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they cannot use the software. And then when they have to read the documentation, understand the problems, it could be a challenge.
Right. Yeah, I got you. And then most of these, yeah. I think I don't have any other questions.
Oh, I see a question on the chat that says, do licenses cost anything to use? No,
No.
that
Yeah.
I know. As far as I know, there are no licenses that cost anything. It's just it's kind of like a document or a contract that you put on how you will do open source business with people. So no, they don't cost anything as far as I know. I might be wrong. Also, just a disclaimer, all this is from my experience working with stuff, but I'm not an expert on licensing at all. So I will always encourage you to just go and read about licenses if that's something that you're interested in knowing. All right, any other questions? All right, don't hear one. So a quick, I just said a bunch of things, and I think there are two components on contributing to open source, and then also having kind of like good practices that can make contributing to open source easily. So if you use I always think of my personal projects, I try to treat them as if they were open source projects. And what do they mean to that? When you have your own repository, you can contribute directly to what's called the main branch, which it will be like the branch that is like the state of the art of the thing, like the thing that you see when you open GitHub, that's kind of like the main branch. So when you have access, if it's your own project, you can push directly to that. And by pushes, I mean putting code directly into that. But I always try to separate things. And what do I mean by that? Let's say that I start working, I have my own project, and my project looks like I have my repo, and we're going to go through the process of cloning a repo and forking and stuff, but just to have an idea. And let's say that I found a bug on my code. I always branch my code into a new, it will be like imagine a branch like a new folder that it's kind of like a place where the things that are outside that folder are not being touched, but it's also a copy of the things that we had before. And I will solve the bug, and then I will actually push the things to a new branch on GitHub, and then do a pull request. And maybe if I have a friend that is also working with me on that project, I can request a review from that, and so on and so forth. So this allows more of like a clean path that when you will be working with other people, having separate branches allow you to not like generate a bunch of conflicts on the main branch. I know I'm saying a lot of things right now. I'm going to walk you through this process like a hands-on. But I just want to, like, if you know what I'm talking when I say branches and pull requests and stuff, then it's a good practice to get into open source to treat your own projects as if they were open source projects. And why do I say that? So when we want to contribute to a project that is not your own project can be an open source project and you can contribute to that project. But let's say that we want to contribute to pandas. None of us, as far as I know, maybe some of us, have push access to the main project, to the main repository. And I'm not saying only main, like even branches and stuff. So in general, like that, those kind of accesses will be limited to the maintainers of the project. So that project usually is what we call upstream. So upstream is the project that I want to contribute to, but I have no access to contribute to that project. Even if I clone it, I won't be able to push things to that project. So the first thing that we do when we want to contribute to a project that I do not have access to push code to is we fork the project. And all this forking process happened on GitHub. So far, there's nothing on my laptop. And in the copy of the project, in the fork of this project, because that will be under my repository and my control, on that copy, I have full access to pretty much do whatever I want. I can use it, I can modify it, and I can keep using that. So with that, usually what we'll do is that we will clone that copy into my local machine, and then I will start working, let's say, on a bug fix, on a new feature, or I will do new documentation. And if I think that I found something that I would like to contribute back, then I will push that to my copy and then open a pull request. Okay, I know there are a lot of things that I'm saying now. This is just in the schematics. We are going to do this a couple of times today, so we learn what does this mean. All right, any question on this part? I know there is a lot of things that I just said.
So we clone out of fork, and then we push
Yes.
to our fork. And then I missed the last part. How do we let the main
upstream?
Yeah.
So on GitHub, we will be able to open a pull request, which is like, hey, I want to add this to your code. Can you please add it? And usually that process will involve a review, and there will be some requirements. So someone that has merge powers will be able to suggest, hey, can you modify this or that? And then when it's ready, they will merge it in. So the next time that someone gets the code, they will have your stuff. And an important part of that is, let's say that you contribute something, but there are a lot of other people contributing. And at the time that so the fork doesn't automatically keeps updated. So you have to update your own copy. And there are like kind of two ways of going about that is via GitHub, you can sync it and then clone and then pull down from your copy, or you can actually pull the changes on upstream directly to your local version. So we're going to do some of this stuff like shortly. So we see it in action. Sure. Do we have other questions? Going once, going twice. All right. So we're going to get our hands dirty now in a second. But when you're looking for a repo that you want to contribute, or certain things that you can improve, there are kind of like easy games that are first looking at the license and see, okay, does this repo has a license that allows me to contribute that, and then I will get credit if someone else uses it. Most repositories or like big open source projects have certain guidelines on how do they want their code to be added. So certain formatting specifications, certain environments that you need to install, things like that. So usually all those instructions on how to get started are written on a file that is contributing.md. That's something that is fairly common. Sometimes if it's not there, you can find the documentation and look for developer contributions or things like that. Another important thing is like check that if the repository that you're trying to contribute is if it's active and if it hasn't been archived. Like sometimes happen, there are certain projects that started and you're using it, but then they archive the project. So that means that no one is paying attention to that. So no, you're not like whatever you try to contribute, you're not going to get reviews, you're not going to get your code merged and stuff. Good things to take a look sometimes is, and this is also good practice for your personal repos, is there a Git Ignore? And that means what are the files that when locally I'm developing are being ignored? Because sometimes if there is not a Git Ignore, you might end up pushing like, you know, those famous like .ipynb when you're working with notebooks that are like kind of checkpoints. You're pushing that kind of trash to GitHub, and there's no point of having that. It's just some kind of local backup. There are ways of filtering that. Then it's good to check if the code has tests. Usually when you add new code, you will be required to add tests that back up that code. And then if there are any other documentations. So with that said, before doing this, I'm going to show you quickly what do I mean by having good practices on my own repo. And this is something that you can all do with me like right now. So I'm gonna, let me see, oops. Let's just keep this on the side. And I am going to, let me see if this is like big enough. Oops. So if you have a GitHub account, your personal GitHub account, so this is mine. If you have one, I'll invite you to right now start a new repository. Actually, we can actually do that all together. I created one, but we can create all one together. So I'm going to make this bigger. Oops. Let's just all create a new repository. So if I go to repositories, a bunch of things in here. Most of this stuff are forks. I created this recently, but I'm going to create a new one. So we go through this process. So we'll create a repository, and I'm going to call it like code. You put the name that you want. Test. Description. This is a repo to test Git and GitHub workflow. Something like that. I'll make it public. You can add a README, which will say that. When I talk about the Git Ignore, this is something that you can do. In general, I add the default for Python because most of the stuff I do are Python related. So I'll just go all the way here and look for Python. This will add a file that when I clone locally, there are a lot of things that are usually junk that get generated on my local folder that will be ignored when I'm working with Git. And here is the part that you'll say, choose a license. So I always go choose a license, and I go and I get BSD3 new or revised license. So with that, I would say that that's the minimum that I could have to start a repository. In general, whenever I start a project, that's kind of like the first things that I put in it. So if I create one, I have something. So one thing that when I talk about that you can do easy contributions to open source without even having to clone repos or things like that. Let's say that you are one of you or just have access to a repo, or a friend of you have access to a repo, and says, let's say that you just find a typo here, or just don't like that women who call underscore test. One thing that you could do is just go here and edit it. You can just remove that, and you will be able to commit here right away. You can, and this is more or less something that is more contain, and then we don't have to clone or fork or do things. But we'll do like a, let's say, update or remove underscore from title. And I can just, because this is my repo, I can commit directly. And here I'm committing. So if you see that, by the way, is this a big enough font or this is too small? I can make it bigger. Okay, it's okay. All right, so in here, I could be committing directly to main, but in general, like people would recommend to start a new branch and open that pull request. Right now, I'm not gonna do that because I wanna show you the process of doing that through the terminal. So I'm just going to go away and then modify that. So I do have my repo. This is my tiny project. And I want to show you this, that we talk about best practices that will translate directly. And it's a safe space to make mistake because this is my own repo that then will translate well when we go to try to contribute to someone else's project. So one thing we'll do is the first thing that we talked about was we want to clone this repository. So right now I don't have a copy of this in my local machine. So the way we do that, we go here to code, and this is you'll see that there are multiple options here, HTTPS, SSH, and GitHub client. I have my credentials set up to work with an SSH. I think that goes a little bit over what we want to do today. We can, on a second session, talking about other good practices or things that we can do, we can go about that. If you don't have SSH set up, you can go and click HTTPS, and that will ask you for your username and password when you clone your repo. So we copy this. Actually, I think I can copy that. And then I'm going to grab a terminal. So let's just make this let's just grab a terminal, and I will do, I'm on a folder that I just created for this. So there's nothing in this folder. And I will do Git Clone and that repository. And this will clone that. So if I check, it is there. So I have that's a folder. So I will do CD, women who code test. I do have my terminal set in a way that if I am using Git, it will tell me on which branch I am. This is another stuff that you can learn and use, and it's part of the development, and it might make your life easier. But if not, you can check doing Git branch where you are. So right now we only have one branch. So let's say that we want to that this repo is not saying match, it's not saying the purpose, and I do have a README file, but maybe I could put another phrase that says something nicer. So when I mentioned that, I always try to follow open source practices, even when I work on my own projects that I have full control. What I mean is, let's create a branch and let's make a modification. Let's push that modification and open a PR on GitHub. So to do that, what we do is git checkout -p, and I'm checking out to a branch that will name it update readme. I always try to pick names of the branches that tell me what is it I'm working on. So in this case, I will do that. So now you can see that I'm on update readme branch. And let's just modify the readme and let's put something in there. So what we will do is you can open the readme in your editor of preference. In general, for me, I usually use, if it's a short thing, I will use Vim. I'm not gonna do that today because I'm probably gonna mess up. So let's just use, I use VS Code, but you can use whatever you want. So we'll do code, and that will open a VS Code Yes, I trust the authors. No, I don't need to update now. I will go to the README and I will say, let's make this title better. So let's call it Women Who Code PC. Let's call it test repository. And I'll say, this is a repo, says Git and GitHub workflow that was created during the intro to OSS. Actually, I'm going to leave that typo there on purpose. So OSS session. And I will save that. So when I go back to my terminal and I check what's the status of the repo, I do git status, I will see that the README file has been modified. So I will do git add README. So I will see git status. It's there. We need to commit now. So we'll do a git commit. In this case, it's a short message. So I'm just going to do -m and do add more context to README file, something like that. So now I have the changes locally, but those changes have not been pushed to GitHub. So I have this local stuff, but in GitHub it's not there. So what we'll do is we do a Git push. And in general, when I do a Git push, Git is gonna complain, but I always let Git tell me what I'm wrong. So if I do Git push, it will say, fatal, the current branch update README has no upstream branch. And that means, hey, there is no place in GitHub that there is a branch called that is called update README. Can you set that up? So Git is telling me what to do. So I just literally copy this. It says get push -- setup upstream origin update README. So I'm going to clear this so we can see again. So I will do that. And now what happened is if I go back to the, where is it? Oh, here it is. So we can close this now. Now, if you all see here, this is my repository. And then GitHub is telling me, hey, there is an update README that had recent pushes less than a minute ago. Would you like to open a pull request? So I would say, yeah, I would like to. So I will do that. And I see that this is a separate branch. And it says, add more context to README. So I'm just going to create a pull request. So now we will see that there are no conflicts to add these changes to the main repository, to the main branch. And I see this commit stuff. So I see the commits there and I see the file changes. And here is something that I want to point out, that contributing to open source can also mean reviewing pull requests. Let's say that you are known or you have you know the topic that we're talking about, or you understand what's happening here. You could actually come and review my own PR. So I made 2 typos on purpose. So there is one here and one here. So one thing that I can do, and this is something that if you have ownership of your repository, you are the maintainer of your project, this is something that you can do that also helps other people contribute to your project. So you can go here, and then actually there's this button that is called Add Suggestion. So you can click on there, and it says Suggestion. And instead of that title, I'm going to do, instead of says that, I'm going to do test. And I'm going to say, we can start review, or we can just add a single comment. So I'm going to add the single comment. And what is this going to do is I can directly commit that suggestion without having to pull the code back on my local repository and then push again. So because I am the reviewer and I have the admin privileges of these repositories, I can have this commit suggestion button. But so I'm going to do this, and then I will say fix title, commit changes. Now, locally, I don't have those changes. So we should actually do, we can actually update my local version by doing Git Pull. If I do Git Pull, that will bring that change in the README. Now, can someone, anyone, because this is a public repository, go here. I'm going to put the link on the chat. I need a volunteer that goes there and just click in here and suggest to modify that intro to an INT to properly write it, because I want to show you what happens when we see there. So I need one volunteer. I don't know who wants to do it, to go there and do that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it, but I think you sent the message, because I sent a message directly to you. I don't know if you send it to everybody, but it seems like you sent it.
Go. Yeah,
Yeah.
You. Oh, I said me too. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Let me
it's
see.
okay. No, I can do that. Yep.
I can put everyone.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to see, although, then we can have it. So yeah, you can.
So I'm
You can put there.
You want me to?
You should be able to click in there. And then put add suggestion.
Oh, you want me to suggest another thing?
So in the second part, so there's a typo that it says during the, I should say intro, but it doesn't say intro.
Yeah.
So if you can edit that.
Let me see if I have access.
You should.
Well.
So what's going to happen is, remember your name?
My name, Nafisa.
Nafisa. So you will be able to add the suggestion and do a commit, but I won't be able to directly commit that because you don't have admin access on things. But you are reviewing my PR. So let me know when you were able to add the single comment. And
yeah,
then we should.
It's I don't see a suggestion.
It's not there. You don't have the suggestion button.
No.
Okay, so I thought that should happen, but if you don't have the suggestion button, then you can you just put a comment and say, hey, there is a typo in here. So someone says, I see it on my end. Okay.
Oh,
so,
I think because I wasn't logged in. Sorry.
Okay. Well, if you're logged in now, then if not, someone else can do it. We will have plenty of opportunities to do this multiple times with people. So if someone sees it and wants to do it,
yeah,
go ahead.
Someone else can do it faster.
Yeah.
I am logging in, but I'm also okay. Okay. Yeah, someone.
There we go.
Yeah,
all right. So it's interesting because it says here says this is a repo, blah blah blah, and because also I have access. So I would say that the person that make this comment, they cannot commit directly, but I can commit their suggestion because I have admin powers. If I didn't have admin powers, then I will only be able to leave the comment, but at least this gives me an idea of what the fix is. So in open source, something I noticed when I stumble upon first-time contributors is sometimes you want to contribute, but you need a little bit of a push on understanding or some guidance on how the thing will look like. So when you are reviewing, if you can help that person make it feel frictionless, and if for you doesn't take that much job to saying that, it's just put the suggestion there. So then that way I can just commit and I can say fix text body. Oops. So, or fix text. I can just do, oops, what happened? Commit changes. So now we have the good thing. So I'm seeing this, I can see it locally, but now I would say that I will go, if I check back the conversation, I will see all the things that happen. And then I can say, left a comment and stuff. So now I can just go ahead and merge this pull request. We just updated that and everything is happening. It says, and that is committing to the branch. Yes, everything is happening to the branch. Whenever we open a PR, the PR is attached to that branch. So we are still on the update Readme. And now we're going to merge that into main. So we'll do that.
And what happens if somebody, so say like somebody made that suggestion and then someone else came along and said, oh no, like that deletion or whatever is wrong. Can they comment? Can they suggest on the suggestion? Or is it kind of a top level thing?
No. When you, I should have, let me see. Let's just go back to actually the suggestion. Well, let's say that I'm just going to type this on purpose, but
okay.
Let's test comment, something like that. And I will do add a single comment. So if you see here, there is a reply to that suggestion. So you can keep the thread and the discussion in there. You can add a suggestion and only a person that has, let's say, control over the repo can actually go and commit it. So and if the suggestion comes from a maintainer, you could also commit it. But we'll see more of these examples and how does this help review. But in general, like someone else can come here and say, like, hey, I don't think this modification is good. So if the commit has already happened, what we will see is like in the conversation, this will be outdated.
Oh,
but it will be it will still be here. So I can come here and say, hey, maybe we should write something a little bit better than just that. And then we can keep working on the PR. And in general, when we think that this is ready and we can request reviews here. So for example, the people that were already checking in here, I can ask them to review and they can give me like a green button. But in general, when we think that this stuff are okay, then we just go ahead and confirm merge. So this is something that I would encourage you sometimes, like when you are at work, let's say that you have your own repository, that you all have push accesses. It's always good to have these practices, and then PRs are a good place to start discussions, even when you're working on something that is not ready yet. You can make every PR, when you open a PR, I didn't show that, but we're going to see it on other cases. It could be also work in progress PR. So doesn't necessarily mean that it's ready, doesn't necessarily mean that there are things going on. So yeah. So yeah, see, like someone else comment here, like all that can happen. And none of the people that are commenting in here right now can actually push things to my repository, but I could give them access to do that. So now this is merge. In general, whenever we merge something, we delete the branch. I tend to delete a branch, and every time that I start something new, I go ahead and start a new branch. So I will just go ahead and delete the branch because this was merged. And I will go back to the code. And then now I will see that this has been updated, and this is on main. Now, one thing that happens in open source project is like there are a lot of commits and PRs being merged per day on the main branch. And one thing that we need to do is keep our local version updated. So whenever we do start a new branch, we are not like way behind in the history. So in general, what I do is, when this thing has been merged, I do in my local version, I do git checkout main. I notice that some projects still have the name master on the branch. There is a way of changing that. Now the default in GitHub is main. If the default on your repository is master, you can change that or you can keep working on that. So main or master is the same for that purpose. So if I look here, if I look at the README, so if let's say I know that before there was a question about BIM. So BIM is like an editor on your terminal that you can open and see that. Don't try to learn it. It's just a nightmare. But if you know something, sometimes it could be helpful. But we can check quickly what it's on README. So if I do cat README, so you see that this is the old version of the text. So that means that my local version doesn't have what it's been happening on GitHub. So what we do is Git Pull. So I'm pulling the changes that happen on GitHub. And that should be now the proper text in there. So, okay, so this is cool and this is about a best practice, but what happens if I really want to contribute to someone else's code? And I'm going to show you one small example, and then we're all going to contribute in the time left, we're all going to make contributions to the Women Who Code thing. So a while back, around 2 years ago, I attended this Women Who Code really cool workshop given by Steph. Sorry, I'm going to put you in the spot, Steph. That it was an intro to testing. So there were a lot of cool stuff that happened here, and I think that this will be a really cool repo that we could probably reuse and then add more stuff. But let's just try to make 1 or 2 contributions in here. And one thing that I noticed, and what we talked about first was, hey, I would like to add things to this, let's say some doctrines to the code or something like that, but there's not a license in here. So I would say that there are 2 ways of going about this. I can open an issue and I can say, new issue. This is something that you could do. So to say, add a license file. And in here, so something that I would say is when you're opening issues, I know that you want things to get fixed, but you have to understand that open source contributors, most of the time are people that are just putting their own time into a project. They might not have the time. So be nice, be polite, try to keep the environment safe so then people are welcome to contribute and also to respond back. So in general, what I would say is that, hi there, I really like this repo and I wanted to contribute to it. Can you please add a license? If you don't know how to, I'm happy to open a PR, a pull request. So Steph is going to get a notification and she could tell me, sure, I can do that. Or yes, a PR will be welcome. So one thing that we could do is that. So if you want to make a contribution, another one, I will wait for that license to happen or Steph to tell me, hey, can you open a PR? So we can see how that works. So Steph, if you want to just tell me, go ahead and open a PR, I'm happy to do that.
Yep.
All right. So
just left you a note.
let's just open a PR. So adding a license is something that we could probably do all of it in GitHub. And so we're just going to do that. And then we are going to add another contribution by cloning a repo. So for now on, I'm going to stay on GitHub world. So we're not going to touch the terminal. So the first thing that we need to do, usually do thumbs up, and I go back to the code. And up in here on the right, I don't have control on pushing to this repository, and I don't want to ask Steph for that. So I will go and fork this repository, and I will fork it to my personal account. I have other organization stuff. This should take a couple seconds. So, all right, we have a fork. So if you notice here, it says fork from staff non working to testing, but this is my version. This is my copy of this. So if you notice, let's just put this side to side. Here, I could add a file directly to a staff copy, but that is going to ask me to kind of create a branch and a patch and a thing. But the thing that I will do is make a fork, and then on my end, I have full control of this. So what we'll do is add a file, create a new file. This is how you can add some licenses. It's an easy way of doing directly from GitHub. I would also, in general, I will let the maintainer of the repository add the license, because I would like them just to choose what they want. I'm assuming that Steph is going to be okay if I suggest a BSD3. If not, she will tell me when I make a PR, hey, can we use a different license? So in GitHub, if you name the file license, this will choose a template. It will pop up. So this is an easy way of adding a license. I will call it license or license MD. That's something that you, an MD. I like having the extension of the file. And I will choose a template. And I will go here to a BSD3. I will say year, submit. I don't know, this full name stuff, I'm not quite sure. I think here it should be a staff's name. What's your name? It says Stephanie.
I just put it in the chat.
Because otherwise, this will add a license that has my name and a copyright. So that's not ideal. So I'm showing you how to add a license. Also, you can do it on your own repo. In general, yeah, you will actually probably add your own license. You can also eventually modify this. So let's say eventually I contribute a bunch to this code and I would like to be included, then you can probably add to the copyright my name too. That's something that you can request. If not, who cares? It could be added to the organization. It could be added to multiple stuff. So I would say review and submit. So this will create a file that says copyright reserved to Stephanie. And basically what this license is saying, you can all go and read it. That is, if anyone were to use this repository for, let's say, I'm going to expand this, I'm going to fork it, and I'm going to create my own version, I have to be credited to stuff. That's what's got to happen. So here I can just do create a license, and this gives me the option to create a branch. So I will do it on a branch, not do it directly on master, or even though it's my own copy of the repository. So I'm going to do commit new file. And before creating the pull request, I would say create license. So I usually put a comment to open the PR that says this PR contain or adds a license credited to the author of the repository. Yeah, something like that. And I will create a pull request. So now something that happens. So I see this in here, but if we go to the original repository, so that did I created the pull request? Why? Oh, wait. I created it against my own repository. That's why I have merged pull request. So let me see. Yeah, this will be adding the thing to, okay, I'm adding this to mine. So let me I should have done this differently, but we're going to see this. So my version has this. So it says, do you want to contribute? Because like now this branch is 2 commits ahead. So I will do open a pull request. And yeah, this got merged. So I create a pull request here. License, create pull request. And this is opening a pull request against a Steph version of the repository. So if we go back to Steph's repository, there should be a PR here where, have you see, I don't have access to merge this pull request. I don't. Any of you can go and comment here and add comments. I wouldn't add any comments to the what's it called, to the license, because this is pretty standard legal standard stuff. But like if I were Steph, I would say, hey, thank you for the contribution. This is getting merged, and then she'll add it. And then now I will feel that we can contribute some other kind of code. So Steph, you want to go ahead and merge that if you're comfortable with that. If not, we can just move on. Yeah, this looks good to me. Merge. I usually try to be nice and say, hooray. And that's good. So that means something I forgot is that when you open a pull request, you can actually close automatically the issue by saying closes and the number of issue. So I'm going to close this manually now, but I'll show you how to do that afterwards. Since number 1 was merge, I'm closing this. So you'll see that when I say number 1, it creates a link, and that is the number of PRs. So PRs and issues have numbers, and you can actually just link them this way. So we'll do a close with comment. Cool. So that's like a quick thing. Now let's see how will this process will look like if I do it. If I want to do a different kind of change that will require to bring the changes down to my local repository. So let's check something that could be added or easy. Sometimes I check Git Ignore and see, oh, well, there are like a lot of stuff in here added. So then there's not, I cannot add things to that. So that seems like a standard one. We could, there's not a contributing guidelines here. I think when there's some small projects that you won't find that, but that's something that could be added, but we don't know what step 1, so then we could just leave that there. Let's say that, let's go to, I think is the debug answers. So if you check out here, like all these functions, the doc strings are comments. So if I want to check the doc strings of the function, I won't see them because they're not in the doc string format, they're on a comment. So what if we just convert these ones quickly into doc strings, and that way we can do that. So the way we will do that is, now that we have a fork, so on the right, this is my fork. So I need to clone this. Actually, this is not my fork. I'm just seeing this is Steph. So I will go to my profile. And you should see now that there's the copy should be somewhere. Didn't I fork this? What was the, oh yeah, it's this one. When we go into testing.
Yeah, that's it.
So
Naty, how do you keep your fork up to date? So
That's
say
a
like
great
other
question.
people were going in and making contributions.
That's a great question. So we're going to do that.
Oh, cool.
I'm
Okay.
going to show you that, like how you do that. So let's say, so this branch you're going to commit behind. Sure. So something that you could, there are 2 ways of kind of doing that. So you see that here there is a fetch upstream. So that's how you can keep it up to date in GitHub. You could also do it locally by setting upstream to be the original repository and then pulling from there. If you are not if you're not super comfortable with Git on the terminal, I would suggest always it's easier to keep in sync your GitHub version. So usually I just go ahead, you just go ahead and here and just click on that so that will keep it up to date. So successfully fetch. So now, oops, what's saying this branch is up to, okay, this branch is up to date. So we're up to date here. So I'm going to clone this locally, do some work, push it, open a PR, and then we'll see what happens in there. So we go and clone this as if it was any other repo. So I'm going to just put this here. So I will do git clone. This is my copy of a stuff repo. So I will do a cd intro to testing. So this tells me I'm a master. In general, some repositories, if they use particular software and stuff, they will have an environment file. So you will create that environment file and then work with that environment file. This is, I believe this is like pure Python things. So we just have in Python. Give me 1 second because my headphones are running out of battery. So I'm gonna turn them off. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, you still sound good.
Cool. So we're locally here. So now I'm on this repo. And if you see here, we have the README, the debug answers and stuff. So let's just open this on code, on VS Code. And let's just make some changes. And yeah, I trust the authors. Also, I don't use all the gadgets of VS Code. I'm pretty bad at it. I mainly use it as an editor. Apologize for that. You just go on answers, and then I see what I want to do is, no, I don't, sure. Here, have this. So I'm going just to go and convert this now. Oh, I think I'm putting the wrong quotes. This is gonna get all red. Okay, so the difference is if I do that, we can now probably read what this is doing. So divide num by denum. Actually, there's a typo there.
Yeah, nice catch.
We can do that. We can write them in a different way. Like there are standard ways of writing doc strings. You will see some projects that will have instructions. So what is the PEP that you follow to write doc strings? For now, we just want to learn the process, so we don't want to get complicated with that. So we can just go and do, I'm going to do 2 of this. So then, oops. This was a comment. So, let's just do 2. Someone else can come and then do the rest. Actually, and that will be something that, let's say I just do 2, and when we go into the review process, Steph can say, hey, since you just did 2, can you finish this up? So that will be a fair ask. So if I do here, status, I see there is a change in here. So we can just add this. Something that happens in big open source projects is whenever we're modifying a script, there's a formatting that will happen at the commit time. And they usually have instructions on how to set that up. If you are interested in learning all those things, how to set up pre-commits, how can we get started with GitHub Actions, how can I make my repository more open source friendly, we can do a separate session on that, and I'm happy to help with that. But for now, let's just concentrate on learning the first steps. So we need to commit this, and let's say convert comments into doc strings. So now I did something bad. I'm just realizing that I never check out the branch, this to a branch. So I am on master. I should have actually go back and then do this on that. So something that we could do is, and this is more of a Git stuff. So let's say that you made a mistake, because I made a mistake. Anyone can make a mistake. So I can check the log, and I can see that which one was. This one was the last one, and then this is where we are now, and this was the last one when we clone it. So we can grab this, the first couple of numbers, and I think, and this might not work, but I think this is what we want to do. Let's just say that we want to start again. So we can do git reset. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so git status. Okay, so we're back to the point where those stuff weren't committed. So we reset it to that point. So in this, I believe if now I do git checkout -p, I think this is probably going to complain. So let's call it docs or docs, the branch. I think this is going to tell me, let's see. Okay, we switch. So if I do git status, I still see the modified things. So then we will, now we're good. So I reverted the mistake I just did. So let's commit now, git commit -m. Actually, we need to add it. Git add debug answers, git commit -m, convert comments into doc strings. I see there was a question. It says, if you create the branch now, won't you add this transfer to the branch? I think like after you commit it, the things that were still in main, I think they were still doing the branch, but then I will have things on my main. So in my work, I just want to keep, usually I want to keep main being an exact copy of what's the main on the upstream repo, which will be in this case a Steph's repo. So I don't want to interfere that. It might work, but I don't remember. So then I would just always rather like usually create a new branch and then do that. So we have the branch now, we commit. So let's just do a git push. And again, this will tell me that there is not a branch upstream. That is that. And where upstream, it can be a little bit confusing here because here upstream means my version, my remote version of the repo. So it's not upstream, the Steph repo, it's on my GitHub fork. There's nothing called origin, it's nothing called add docs. So then we just do that. We just push that. So now if I go to, where is that? We were on, admit this. So if I am here now on my version, I can do a compare a pull request. So I will just click on there. And then this will say, making that pull request from my branch to the master branch on a Steph's repo. This will already suggest me to do that. If a Steph didn't want this to be on the master repo, then it can tell me that, well, no, I don't want that. Can you open it against another branch or those things like that? So I'm gonna like just quickly do this, and I can create a pull request. So if you see the files changes, here is that. And here you can kind of like make this bigger. It only shows you the difference between these two. I also do have this set up to show side by side. If you wanted to look all unified, you can click in the diff view over here. If I were Steph, she will go and then say, hey, thanks for the contribution. This looks a little bit incomplete. Can you add, can you convert this one into a docstring too? And she could make the suggestion actually to right away do it because she has admin access. So that's something that could happen. Now, I don't know, Steph, if you're on the repo, you can go and do it, or you can just comment and then tell me, hey, can you fix this? We'll do that later. So then we can move on to do something like this that we all can do to the Women Who Code repo.
Yeah, so if I click on pull requests, then I click on
Yeah,
the
so
one that you opened. Okay, so now I see your PR, and then I can click over to the commits.
you should be able to put a comment. Actually, I don't, yeah, because I didn't modify that line. I don't know.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you have to be close to something you changed, right?
I don't know if I think it has to be a modify line, but
Okay.
something that you can go on the file. I believe that you can actually click and do a comment, still do a comment. I don't know if you have access.
Let's see.
Can you add a comment in any line? Or
Yeah, let me try that.
so it says, there's a question that says, how was the small diff window generated? Are we talking about this diff?
No, Naty, earlier when you were around the lines 30, 31, 32, there was like 2 tiny windows showing the diff. I had not seen that before. Maybe,
Tiny windows?
I mean, I don't know, maybe that was like a small preview or something.
Let me see. Oh, I know. You mean this?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is like when you go to the settings, you can view it in a split view or in a unified view. So if I do unified, this will show me this way.
Okay.
I find it easier to follow this.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, so that comment is fair, and I would say yes, yes, absolutely. I missed that. So in general, like I'll just do add a single comment, and what I will go and do is on my local version, we have the VS Code, different VS Code here, and I will go and say, oops, I missed this one. So I'll just go and do this. So I'll save that, and I see here status. I will do actually something that you can also see a diff locally. So you can do it before adding the thing. You can do git diff of the file, debug answers, and it will show you what the changes are. So then you can make sure that you change that and not something else. So you can add this, git commit add missing docs. So I will push. And one thing that you notice is the PR is still open. So when I push, that PR is going to be updated. I don't have to open a new one, and I don't have to, like, while the PR is open, if I keep pushing to my branch, things will keep in sync. So I'll push that. So if we go back to here and I reload, I should see the last part in here. So now, like, this could be, if a step would like me to add something else or would like to request something else, she'll say, hey, thanks for adding this, but I think this is not ready. Can we do this? Can we do that? All that conversation can happen here. And as soon as Steph thinks, oh, this is good to go, she will go ahead and merge it. Now, any of you could have actually go to the repository and then say, hey, can you actually, you missed this comment, can you add it? You missed this. So you don't necessarily have to be the one doing the coding. You can also contribute by reviewing. And something that happens a lot, it's like a lot of people open issues, some people open PRs, but sometimes like we struggle on getting reviews. So that's one thing to do. So that being said, we've all gone through this. So I was, if I go back to the slides, so you all probably saw copy, if you're not familiar with the Women Who Code DC repository, so dropping a link in the chat. So this is a repo where we tend to add things and keep stuff updated for the meetups. So this is not a package. It's where we put things, and there are a lot of things that are in here. But this day, if I wanted to reuse any of this, I noticed that at first there is not a license, for example. So I don't know if we have or who has the authorization to add a license to this. I would like that there was an license that existed in there. I don't know if we can request another license now. Do we know who could make that decision? Or we don't know?
Oh, for the actual repo?
Yes.
I think we'd have to run that by Victoria.
Okay. So let's imagine that we have a license for now, because I want you all to kind of learn and then be able to contribute to this. I pointed out a couple of small things that we can change, and I think that we could all do that. So I think that will be a good learning process. Ideally, this will have a license. And if I were to contribute to this, I would like to have a license, because if I add things to here, then I don't know who, like whoever probably is someone that created the repo owns the copyright. So if I would like to reuse my own material that I added here, I could someone could be evil and not let me do that, or say, hey, why you're using this? You shouldn't be using this. But I added it. Yeah, but it's on our repo. So that's why licenses are important. But I will point out, so to a couple of things. Let's see, where are the slides? There we go. So I believe, let me see if I can, okay. So there are a couple of things that are super small changes that we could make and contribute to the Women Who Code DC Python community repo. So the repository is there. So if you want to be part of this, want to go through the process, I will encourage you all to fork this. I don't think I have done it myself. So if I go to here, I will fork this. So if you want to like make some of this contribution, go ahead and fork it. I noticed that we have one of the contribution would be adding a license, but I don't know who has power to make that decision. I would say not having a license is a problem, but for any open repo, public repo. But let's just assume that we have that. If you go to, for example, the contributing MD, you'll see, and this is something you usually will look for. So this has basically couple of recommendations of how you can contribute to this. You can go and read over, but I noticed that this should be titles. And the reason why they're not titles is because in Markdown, you have to like put a space between the hash pound and the thing. So this is one thing that we can fix. You can actually do it from probably from GitHub. I would recommend that we fork, we work locally. So we fork, we clone, we create a branch, and we do all the things. Other thing that we could do is, whoever is familiar with how you can remove safely files on Git, like doing Git remove, we have in the Python community, and I think the problem, because this happened, is because the Git Ignore is not updated. So if you see these dstore files, these are kind of like backup files that get created by Mac that are all over your folders that are hidden, that if they're not ignored, when you're pushing your material, they will be pushed too. So one way of cleaning that up is in your version, you can remove it. You can do a git remove, but then on the Git Ignore, we can add that file to be ignored in the future. So let me find what's the right syntax for that. Then other thing that we could add is IPYN, the checkpoints to the Git Ignore, not this one necessarily. We could also add a comment on the README. So if we go to the main README, it says there's a Python, it's a study group, and then we meet these times, but it's been 2 years of the pandemic and we haven't met again. So probably we should have a comment that says the meetups are not happening physically at the moment. We're going to still be running some of them virtually. So that's another thing that we could do. So I guess like there are kind of like a couple ways of doing this. Who'd be interested in making some of these contributions? We can find other ones too on the repo. But I think that needs help because doesn't remember all the steps. Any volunteers? All right, so Jennifer says, I'll do the IPY and be added to the Git Ignore. I think that one is actually, let me find, let's see, tutorial. I think is, so a while back I did, and I actually gave this as a tutorial. It's, if you go to the Git Ignore, the way of adding it, I think is, let me see. Yeah, here. So we need to add this to repo. Okay, cool. So that the IPY is this one. I would like to make a comment about the pandemic. I'm not fluent in Python much yet. That's perfect. Yeah, let's just start adding those stuff. Okay, so that's cool. So one thing that I would do is I will go through the process, but you can all do the contribution that you want to do. So I'll show how I will do one, but I'm not going to do the pull, the push and the pull request. So then you can all do that. So let's say I'll do this one, which is the one that requires to delete a file and then do that. And then you can all follow the process. So then we can open all this PR and then we can probably review it. So let's do that. So I'm going to, so this is my fork. So I am on my fork. So I'm going to clone this. And we will see now that the first time that we merge the first PR that we open, some of you might need to update your local version. So this is something that could happen. So let's just go ahead. Hopefully we're all going to be touching different things. So there shouldn't be conflicts, but if there are, we just can, we can try that. So, oops. So let's do a Git clone. This is one example. So I'm going to clone this one. And see, Python community. So to start out of the bat, if you already cloned the fork, let's create a branch that has a name that is significant to what you're going to be working. So it's going to be Git check out, oops, typo, out minus B, git check out minus B, and I'm gonna say clean git ignore. I call it that way, but it could be anything. And I did another typo, git check out, git clean ignore. All right, so in this case, because I'm going to be deleting a file and then I'm going to be modifying a file, I will see more things when I do the git status. So the first thing I want to do is I see that on the main repo, so I'm not going to see it this way because it's a hidden file. So I just need to do ls minus la, and I will see that this one is the one that I want to remove. The .git and the .git ignore, do not remove those because those are important. But I can do, when we want to delete a file and we want to kind of like delete the history of that file, we do a git rm and we put the thing. So I will see now if I do git status, I will see that that file kind of was deleted and it was deleted properly with its history and so on and so forth. So the other thing I want to do is for anyone working on a Mac, if they're working and the .ds store gets added, then this will keep happening if they don't remove it and they don't see it. So I'm going to add it to the git ignore. So we'll do code here, so I can just check the, I think is, oops, yes. So I will go to the, where is the git ignore? Here, and I don't remember what's the syntax of this. So I always tend to look at other git ignores because I don't remember on the top of my head the syntax of the stuff. So that's something that so I usually, so we'll do this. I will do here. I will add that. So that means that if there are any other .ds stores, they will get ignored. So, so if I do git status now, I will see the git ignore has been modified. So we'll add git add git ignore, and I will see, I will say commit minus m add ds store to git ignore. I'm all cool. So then if you already have done your changes locally on your branch, so this will be the moment to do a git push. So we'll do git push and it will complain that say, hey, you don't have a branch that way. So just copy what was said in there and we'll do that. If I'm going too fast, please feel free to stop me. So create a pull request. So if I go now to my version of, so I'm on my fork, it will prompt here saying, hey, you want to open a pull request. So I will see compare and pull requests and say add the, modify that, the stores to git ignore. And on the pull request, I will say, this PR adds, you can do kind of code ways, this, yes, store to the git ignore to avoid, I think that's probably enough. So I can just create a pull request, add to the git ignore, and removes a ds or that was in the repo. So you want these things to look more like code things. So you can do the backticks. So with this, I will just create a pull request. And here, so I believe that, Steph, you have merge access to this, so then you can actually go and review my pull request. You can make comments in here. You can say stuff. Before we merge, I want to see, has anyone, oh, I see 7 pull requests. Okay, I see that one. I see the add Jupyter. Has anyone else been able to add, to go through the other ones, or needs help? We're all good? Am I frozen?
No, I can still hear you.
Okay, because I wasn't sure, like I was frozen or not. Okay, does anyone else needs help or wants help, or are stuck on the process of opening a PR? So I want to see what happens. So I believe that at the moment, nothing should happen when we merge these ones, but they're both touching the same file. So it could be interesting to see how do I keep updated things locally. So if we can merge one of these two, I don't know if like Neha or Steph, you have powers to merge this. Can make a comment or something. I could comment on here, but I won't be able to do the.
Yeah, we should be able to merge.
Oh,
And Neha, do you want to try it?
Yeah, let me check.
is there? I think there was another one. The person that was trying to contribute to the to remove the hashtags, or actually put a space on the hashtag, it still trying to do that, or are they struggling? Happy to help.
So Naty, you just want me to merge the pull request?
But which one are you looking at the add Jupyter or the?
Like any, like I was looking at the first one, at DS store, but
Because that one is the one I did. Let's do the other one, so then I can show you how you update your local version with this. So let's check this one. You can just put a comment that says, "Hey, this looks good to me. Thanks for adding it," and then you can just go ahead and merge it. If someone were to have any comments on writing this differently, it's okay. That's one thing that when you're getting started, I always suggest starting small. So then things get easier, and then also for reviewers too. So then you get that thing of, oh, cool, we were able to add this. So yeah, let's merge that one, and then I can show you how you can keep your things updated locally from the main without actually having to sync your fork. And
I just did.
All right. So one thing I want to check is, wait, even though we touch the same file, because Git and GitHub are smart enough, then these things get kind of sorts out where to put it on the space, but it couldn't be a problem. So one thing is, now if I go and check my version of the repo, so let's go here. So if you go to your version, Now, because that PR was merged, that means the main was updated. So you will see here that says this branch, and I'm here on this branch. Let's go to master. It says this branch is 2 commits ahead, 2 commits behind Women Who Code Python Community Masters. So that means that I'm behind. So you could fetch upstream here, which was one of the ways. This will keep your fork updated, and then you need to clone that locally. That's one way. The other way that you could see in multiple open source projects is they will recommend you to set as upstream the repository that is the main repository. So, and this is something you don't need to do. You can keep working with fetching your fork and then clone it. So I think, let me see how it's done. That's I never remember. I think it's set upstream. Set upstream. How to change, how to set upstream. Oh. Let's just try it on the terminal. If I go to Git checkout main, because it's master. Git checkout master. There we go. So I want to, I think is git set upstream. It will complain probably, and I think I need to give it the this. Can I do that? Let's try that. That way it will say that whenever I'm pulling from upstream, I'm pulling from the main Women Who Code repository instead of my fork, but I have to specify that it's upstream. So let's try that. Okay, so that wasn't, do that? No, okay, so I'll find that soon. Let me see. I should have looked this before, but I didn't. So oh, okay. So this is git remote add upstream and the address. All right, so that means that when I'm in master locally, if I do git pull, it will pull from my fork. So if I do git pull, this will tell me that it's already up to date because this is comparing. This is comparing against my fork. Yeah, so let's go again on if I can explain. So there's a question that says if I can explain again the upstream thing. Yes. So let's go to here. When we were talking about upstream in the jargon in general is the project that I want to contribute to. You can think it like that way. And I don't have control on pushing, but I can pull things down from there if I want to. Now, we always have a copy of that on our fork. So when there was a question before from Stephanie about how do I keep my local version in sync with the original project? So there are two ways of doing that. One is keeping things up to date at the GitHub level. So then keeping my fork up to date by going here and then always like fetching upstream. So this will take care of syncing them. And then I can clone locally. Sorry, I can pull locally the changes that are on my master that has been updated with the main project. Is that clear or that's still not clear?
A little bit, like, yeah, sorry, I've not used upstream before. So.
That makes sense. So we can think of a different name. So we went through the process, like right now, like my fork doesn't have the PR that we just merged, that you just merged on the Women Who Code main repo. Do you get why?
Yeah. Because I did not pull from that one.
Right, and I haven't updated my copy. So we could update that by clicking in here where it says fetch upstream. So that way we will sync the branches, the master branch on my copy and the master branch on the Women Who Code repo, they will be the same. So then the only thing I will need to do is pull down the changes that were updated on my fork from the original repo. So that's one way of keeping things in sync. I would say that that's probably the easier way of doing that. But there was a question at the moment if there's a way of just keeping my local version updated with that, and you don't need to necessarily keep your fork up to date. So one way of doing that locally is you can set the remote upstream doing this, where you're saying, if I tell you to pull from upstream, I want you to bring the changes that were happening in the Women Who Code repo. So if I do just a Git pull, this will pull the things that are on my fork. But if I do Git pull upstream master, because I set up upstream to be the Women Who Code repo, original repo, I'm bringing their master downs locally to my versions. If I do this, it will bring the changes that were added.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, if you see, my fork is still not updated. So I have the changes locally, so it's not updated. So one thing that I can do is either fetch it from here, or I can push this to my fork. It's like, it is a little bit complicated. I didn't mean to make it more complicated. But yeah, we could go over some of this stuff if, again, I think it, once you start doing it, you get used to. But I would say, to back up, if you're just getting started, always keep your fork updated, and then make sure that you're pulling from that fork before you start working. Because otherwise what can happen is that you can get behind and then you can have conflicts, and that's never fun. So I think we're almost at time. We went through, I mean, I'm happy to keep chatting or have plenty of questions. Yeah, so cool. There was an update titles here. So that was pretty neat. So this is something that also could go in, and someone could go and then edit this stuff or do something. But yeah, so this is like the way that I will encourage you if you want to get started and you have your favorite project. So something like a project that I'm very familiarized because I work every day with it is Task. So I wanted to quickly show you, like, okay, this is a big project. It's like, imagine like pandas. How would you get started? So you can actually go and then see there is a contributing MD. So you will go and click in here. They are pointing to a documentation. So usually go and then read the documentation, and it will tell me, okay, separate code repositories for different stuff. When you open an issue, what to do. And it's telling you how to, okay, clone your fork, and it's guiding you things. And these are a couple of the small stuff that I was saying that if you're contributing to a new project or it's a big project and it's code, in general, they will have more requirements of contributing. So this is telling you, you need to install this locally, and then you have to create this environment so that way things will work. And you need to install, there's like a small test. And then I think down below, there is, for example, doc strings. We follow the NumPy docs. And this is how we want you to add doc strings. So if you're adding doc strings, you want to make sure that you're following these directions. And for the code formatting, they're telling you, hey, do this when you're in your environment, and this will automatically do certain stuff. So if you see, like, this is the first thing, like when you're getting started on a project, you should try to find the equivalent of that project and see. Now, this can be really intimidating if you don't know what to start. But the one thing that you can do is, if you go to the repository, you will go to the issues, and then you will see that there are certain issues that are tagged with good first issue or documentation. So then you will try to check and then see, okay, there's a big explanation of what is missing here. And then someone will say, thank you for opening this. Know that in the best practice, you can do this or that. Can you please add this to the docs? And that's kind of like something that happens. So for example, this is an issue that someone opened. And because I was working on this, then I say, okay, we can go 2 ways. And then I decided I will take care of this. And in this case, I asked someone, can you assign it to me? So then I will show up here. So then I will work on this stuff. There are, some things could be intimidated, but some things are like just modifying documentation. So when is that the case, sometimes you can even modify the documentation directly in GitHub. You will see also that, for example, when you open a pull request in big projects, let's try to find something small or something that is not super big. They just check this. So it's trying to add Python support. And there are a lot of files modified, but then there will be things like closes this. So this will close an issue. So you will see at the bottom, there is always this stuff that it runs. There are a bunch of tests that it runs every time that someone's open a PR. This is very, very common in big open source projects. And if you have your own project that you have some tests, setting this up seems super hard, but GitHub in the couple past years have created like GitHub Actions, and setting that up is not too complicated. So that could be another topic. And if people are interested in that, we could generate more of like a hands-on trying to do this. I like people to try to do it their own and creating their own versions. I feel like if you don't do it, then it's hard to learn. So, but yeah, it's like, if you really want to start contributing, I will find first small repos, like what we did today, do that so you get the workflow, and then you can find bigger repositories. You can find pandas or numpys or things like that, and that way you can get started. And it's always usually someone willing to help. Sometimes happen on the issue is people will ask you, hey, would you be willing to open a PR for this? And you can say, hey, I would like to, but I'm not sure how to get started. Can you give me a hint if you think this should be straightforward? And sometimes you can collaborate with something and do it. So I know it's hard. There is a big learning curve on all the process, but part of doing this is trying to break that barrier and then see if we can make a couple stuff easier. So I talk a lot. I wonder if you all have any questions, anything that you want to talk about. I'm happy also to, here's my contact. I should add my GitHub, although nothing happens on GitHub, like there's now stuff. So there's, things there's on the chat, the DC Slack group. so to join. Yeah, do we have any questions, topics that people will be interested? Some of the things that we could eventually talk are like testing and GitHub Actions and how to use SSH keys to authenticate. So if you saw, I never was asking for a password or a username because I have things set up to do that. There could be something completely different. It's like if you have a package and you want to learn how to package something on pip on Conda, that could be something completely different too. How to manage Conda environments or how to create those. So that there are other topics that we could cover. Questions, comments, etc. I think all of those will be awesome topics. Yeah, they're all cool. I think some of them we could make together with the DevOps team, because part of this stuff is like packaging or setting GitHub Actions and testing could be interesting stuff to do together with the DevOps team. So
yeah, I think that's a great idea. I feel they have done something Git related in the past, and though not in the same, obviously, and I think this is a great idea.
I'm going to stop sharing. I can see my face, I guess. But yeah, absolutely. Like any other questions? Do you think that now you have a little bit more, I guess, like tools to go and try to even contribute to the Women Who Code repo, or any other repo that you can find out there?
Yeah, feel free to post to my test repo if you don't want to jump right into the water. I'm happy to let changes come in.
Yeah, and I am definitely.
Baby step.
So what?
Said if people want a baby step, it's just
Baby
me
step.
reviewing your PR, so I'm really friendly. I won't be like a mean guy or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's also why like the Women Who Code is also like nice, because there are some code in there. It can get something that can get a little bit hard is like with Git is like when you see the def of notebooks. So I think that they're working on trying to get a better def for notebooks. There are versions to do that locally, but it can be hard to review sometimes. But yeah, like I would say even creating your own or your personal what's it called? Your personal repo, and then getting familiarized with all the stuff, then absolutely. So it says someone wants the slides. So let me copy the link. I'll put the slides. I'm not very proud about the slides. They look pretty terrible, but
Naty, you can also push the slides and material if you want to the Women Who Code like GitHub account as well. So
yeah.
other people can pull that.
So yeah. I want to also to be able to. So the thing that I talked about the license earlier was if I put things in there, but then I would like to reuse my stuff, there could be like some sort of like copyright. I know that Women Who Code is not going to do this, but that's kind of like the beauty of having a license there. So then people can reuse that, and people could actually reuse my own slides. They would just need to say, hey, thanks to Naty, and we took these slides from this repo, and that will be just it. So yeah, I'll ping someone on the Python Leads channel on the Slack to talk about adding the license in the repo. I think I asked once, but on the other repo, I don't remember which one. So, but yeah.
Great. Maybe we can create a PR for that. Yeah. Or how about like you can add also a repo to your own account, and we can like share the link to that. Do you think you'll be comfortable with sharing the link to the account in the event?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's not about, I mean, I'm comfortable doing it and then making a PR to the thing.
No, I think that would be a great addition, and I think your comment is totally valid. We may as well like get this done on women who could. I'm surprised we don't have that. So I think that's a
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think like I am curious how it works adding the copyright. So I think like whoever is the person that created the repo, I'm assuming there is someone at the Women Who Code level, the DC level, then that person should add the license. So then I believe that the copyright will go to the organization instead of particular people. So that's kind of like something that could be added. Yeah, we can chat about that. Yeah, but this has been fun having play around with Git and stuff like, and I hope it was clear. I know it's a lot, but yeah. We have any other questions? I guess like one question I have is like, out of all the topics that I told you that we could talk, if you were interested on one, which one would be first?
I think for me, it would be GitHub Actions, mostly because it seems intimidating. And yeah, like just how you said that this would be intimidating, but it's not. So I'm hoping for a similar thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think also we could probably use like, yeah, get deeper into testing and then do a couple of those stuff. So I only work with, I mean, on my day-to-day, I work with PyTest, but I know that there are other ways of testing. But yeah, pretty much anything can be run, any script can be automized with GitHub Actions and then run on different environments and different things. So yeah, so that's a good one. I think I'll probably be in touch with the DevOps team and then see if we can make like a small repo thing. So to show the process and then try to make it more or less as a cookie cutter. So anyone that wants to replicate that for their own project could do that. So to get started at least. Cool.
Oh, I had another idea that, like, I saw that how you customize your terminal in the beginning, and I feel like maybe even that might be
that there is a great tutorial. It's called, the terminal that I use is Starship, that allows you actually to have multiple environments of terminals. I only use one, but they have a great tutorial on how to follow and customize things. You could, I'm dropping the link in the chat. So, and there are examples and how to set things up. Starship, I believe it's also an open source project. I don't entirely, I think it is, yeah. It's an open source I believe it's an open source, but yeah, it's an open source project. And that's actually a project that you can contribute to. If you think that when you're reading this and trying to learn, if there is any documentation that is not clear, then you could say, hey, I don't understand this. Can we explain it better? So yeah, that's one way. I don't know, it was nice. Cool. Thank you for coming. Thank you all for coming. This was fun.
Thanks, Naty. It was great. I learned a lot, honestly.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I don't know. I guess yeah. We'll have the recording, and then maybe we can add in the repo a link to the recording, because I feel like all the hands-on part makes it a little bit more. I don't like making slides and then people can read and then don't see it in action. So I think that's why having a recording is better. And hopefully they can replicate when they see the video. So that'll be good. Cool. Speaking of recording, should we stop the recording now? Probably have way too long.
Yeah, I'll end it now. I wanted to keep the questions just in case. So, okay.
Yeah, I know. If there are any other questions, happy to answer. Thanks, Steph. Thanks for joining. Thanks for all the help. It was very nice.
If anybody has questions, they can also put it on the Slack or the event comments. Feel free. Thanks, Naty.
Absolutely.